managing users and permissions or their access. This is what we are going to discuss in today's session. So, managing user, basically, first of all, let's understand. So far, you guys have created a developer edition, and you are the only user in your developer org, right? And first of all, let's understand how to create a user. Okay, where do we go and create a user? When you approach Salesforce.com, let me just go back to the basics once again. If you approach Salesforce.com and you tell them that I need 20 licenses, Salesforce.com is going to create one license for you and give it to you. One license as in one login ID and password. They will create one login ID password, give it to you, and you can use that login ID password to create remaining 19 accounts. Fine. So Salesforce is not going to create 20 login ID passwords for you. It will just create one login ID password for you, which is basically going to be the admin login. And then using that admin login, you can create the remaining 19 accounts. So, who you want to create it for, what email ID you want to put, and all that stuff, you can decide. Got it? So, let's first of all start with looking at how to create a user, how to add a user here. Revant, oh no, I think I have the password. Alright, to add a user, all that you have to do is go to setup. On the setup menu, you have manage users, click on users, right? Setup, manage users. Click on this and you will see a list of all your existing users. You will see a list of all your existing users, right? And you also have the option of creating a new user. Now this completely depends on how many licenses you have, right? Whether you will be able to create a user or not, that completely depends on how many licenses you have, right? So click on new user. Okay, now the email ID that you define for the user will get an email on this email ID, and um, he will have to set the password. So user himself is actually going to set the password, right? And other information for the users, if you want, you can put role of the user. If there is a role hierarchy for the user, if you want to define license, Salesforce license, administrator profile, so whatever profile. So we'll come to this part, don't worry about this. So just put some information here, click on save. Okay, so the user got created, and it has sent an email also to this email ID for the password, right? If you see, this is my email ID and I have received an email for setting up the password. Yeah. So you don't have to set the password basically for the user. All that you have to do is you just have to put the correct email ID and define the username, this kind of information. That's it. Now the user will receive an email from Salesforce.com. He will set the password, and after that he will be able to log in. Got it? Now the next thing that we have to understand, that let's say in my company there are 20 users. I have created a login ID password for everyone. Basically, I just went and created the users in Salesforce for all of them. Now comes the next point. Who will have what level of access? Will all 20 of them become, system administrators? Will all of them have the same access as I have? That completely depends on me, how I'm actually going to control me as in the administrator, right? To control the permission and access for the user, there is something called profile, right? What is profile? Profile is basically collection of permissions. Okay. Profile is a collection of permissions, and a profile is assigned to user. Every user has a profile. Every user has a profile. Okay. Every user has a profile. Profile is collection of permissions. So the permissions that are allowed to a user are the permissions which are there in that profile. Got it? So you have something like this. You have users here, let's say user 1, user 2, user 3, user 4, user 5, user 6. Okay? And you can create a profile. In that profile, you can put certain permissions. Let's say access to account, access to opportunity, access to lead, access to contact. That's it. Okay. Now this profile I assign to this user and this user. And then I can create another profile where I put a few more permissions, a few additional permissions in this. And then this profile can be assigned to these two users. Correct? So you have to create a profile, or there are a few profiles which are already there. You have to put the permissions in the profile, and that profile needs to be assigned to the user. Okay, every user can have one profile, only one, but the same profile can be assigned to multiple users. As you can see here, the same profile has been assigned to multiple users, right? So every user has a profile, and that profile determines what all permissions the user have. That's it. Got it? So we have the profiles, we have the users, we create the profile, we uh, we create the profile, we put the permissions in the profile, and then that profile is assigned to the user. Very simple, right? And every user needs to have one profile, and every user can have only one profile. You cannot give two profiles to one user, right? And that's what we just saw here. While you were creating the user, there was an option of assigning a profile to the user, correct? So this profile is, in this case we have selected system administrator. You can select any other profile. So profile is just a collection of permissions, right? So the permissions which are available to the user are basically the permissions which are in the profile. So if you have to restrict some permission from the user, you actually don't have to do anything on the user. You just have to go to that user's profile and remove the permission from the profile. All right. Here now, we have standard profiles and custom profiles, like standard object, custom object, standard field, custom field. So in profile also, there are some profiles which have been provided by Salesforce.com, which are called standard profile. There are certain profiles which we can create. I mean, we are also allowed to create new profiles if we are not happy or satisfied with the standard profiles. We can always go ahead and create a custom profile. Okay, so you have the option of creating your own custom profiles. Standard profiles are basically We come here, under setup, manage users, there's an option called profiles. If you click on this, you will see a lot of standard profiles already listed here. You see this? Standard user, system administrator. So these are all different set of permissions basically. Right? If you feel that you can use one of these for your user, it's fine. If you feel that no, you need a completely different set of permissions, you always have the option of clicking on new profile and creating a new profile. Right? So you can create a new profile. You have to, while creating a new profile, you will have to clone it from an existing one. Okay. So anytime you want to create a new profile, you have to clone it from an existing profile. Okay. So standard and custom profiles, we understood that we can create profiles and we have the profiles already available which have been provided by Salesforce. Now come to the next one. What all things are we gonna, what all permissions are we gonna allow or restrict on the profile? What permissions are allowed or restricted through profile? That's the next thing that I wanted to see. First is app permissions. App permission means which all apps are going to be available to the user. If you see the app menu, there are so many apps listed. Out of all these apps, if a company has 10 apps or 15 apps, how many apps uh, are going to be available to the user? You got it? So that's the app permission thing. Then there is tab permission. Tab permission means which all tabs are going to be available to the user. That is the tab permission. Okay, which all tabs are allowed to the user. Sometimes you might not want to show, let's say, you might have a set of users who's working on sales, and you might not want to show the cases and solutions tab to them. Okay, I have a sales team. People are working on the sales side, and they need to work primarily on account contact and opportunities and leads. I don't want them to have access to, or I don't want them to see the cases and solutions. The reason can be anything. I don't want them to see the cases. I don't want them to get too much, information on their screen, so that the efficiency can be increased. So the reason can be anything. But let's say there is my sales team, and I don't want them to see these two things because they anyhow don't need to work on cases. Their job is to work on account contact opportunities, right? So this is another factor. So why do we control the visibility of things like apps, tabs? One reason is sometimes we don't want my end users to see certain things. Sometimes it will be a requirement because if you are creating too many things and you allow everyone to see everything, the entire user interface also starts looking a little clumsy. So that also does not help the efficiency of the end user. So from that point of view also you might need to remove certain things. Only things they need, let's keep them on the user interface, right? So the tab permission can be controlled on the profile. Object permissions can be controlled on the profile. Which all objects they will have access to, which all objects the user will have access to. In object, you have the option of giving read, create, edit, delete access. So whether a user will have access to see data or create records or edit records or delete records in a certain object, right? So sometimes you might not want to give delete access to certain users. They can see data, they can create records. Now object, if you go to a certain object, let's say you go to account object, you are able to create record, you are able to see records, right? You have the option to view the data. View is the minimum permission. You can view data, you can create data, you have the permission to edit and delete also, right? But if you do not want certain users to be able to delete records, right? Let's say there is a pre-sales executive, you just want him to see the data, he should be able to edit it, but he should not have the delete permission. So that's something which needs to be restricted on the profile. So for object you have the option of restricting the access to read, create, edit, delete. Okay, this is also called CRUD: create, read, update, delete. Okay. Object permission, when I'm talking about both standard as well as custom object permission. So you can control the permissions for standard as well as custom objects for the users. Next is field permissions. What is field permission? Field permission is, and now you might be thinking that field permission, is that not a part of the object permission? Because field is also part of object permission, correct? So if I am not allowing you to see the entire object, if let's say this is an object and this is a field, so some information is there in this field. So if I allow you access to this object, you will have access to this field also by default because it's a part of the object. If I restrict the access for this object, your access to this field will also be restricted, right? But in some cases, you will have a requirement where you just want to control the access to the field, where you want your user to see the entire object, but one field you want to hide from the users. For example, there is a field in contacts where you have stored social security number, or you have stored, let's say, email ID, and you don't want everyone to see that, or you have stored the mobile numbers of the customer. So that field you want to restrict the access to from the end users, certain group of users. You don't want them to see the field. You want them to see everything else, right? So that's basically the field level field permission, and it's also called, in our Salesforce terminology, we also call it field level security. All right. Field level security basically allows you to hide a certain field from certain users. Even if they have access to that particular object, still you can go ahead and hide the access of the field from a certain set of users. Got it? So again, if you see, we are back into the same set of components which we were creating: apps, tabs, objects, and fields. That's what we created, right? So the concept is pretty simple. Whatever we have created, we have to control access for those components only, right? So whatever components we have in Salesforce, we need to go ahead and control access for those components only. So that's the reason why we again see the same set of components. These are the things that we created the other day. And now we are talking about controlling permissions for these things. Right? So it's just about understanding the structure really well. So if you understand the structure, like which object, where is this field, you will understand this controlling access, controlling permission also better. because you will have very clear requirement that this user should not be able to do this. Now you just need to identify that which component I'm talking about, right? So if I say that the sales team should not have access to uh, the project management app, then you know that we are talking about restricting the access of the apps. Has got to do with the app permission. I say sales team should not have access to cases and solutions, let's say, right? Then your next question, in case you are the administrator and I'm the client, I tell you that, hey, you know what? I don't want my sales team to have access to cases and solutions. Now your next question will be, do you want to completely remove cases and solutions thing from the sales team? They should not even see it, or you want them to see it, but not they should not be able to edit, or they should not be able to create, right? So that's basically what we'll have to understand. So if I want to completely remove it, let's remove the tab itself. But if I say no, let the tab be here. Just don't allow them to edit the cases. So you can keep the tab here, and in the object permission of cases, you can just give a read permission. Got it? So that's how simple it is. You just have to figure out the requirement where the permission needs to be controlled, and then based on that, you will just go ahead and control it. Right. Now, where do we do all these things? We have been talking about app permission, tab permission, object, and all these things. Where do we do all these things? We will do all these things inside the profile. So as I said, permissions are not given directly to the users. Permissions are put on the profile. Correct? So all these things you will control on the profile itself. Right? So the current user that I have here, what is the profile for this user? How will I find it? For any user, if you want to figure out what is the profile of that user, you just have to go to manage users and then click on users. Revant is the current user. What is the profile? Revant is using system administrator, right? So if I have to control anything for Revant, I have to go and make changes in the system administrator profile, on his profile. I don't have to go to the user as such. I have to go to his profile and control things. Let's say I don't want Revant to see uh, I just want Revant to see sales and marketing apps, no other app. Then all that I need to do is I just need to go to his profile. You can directly click on this link to go to his profile, or you can go from here. You can go to the profiles and it will again show you the list of profiles, and you can go from there. Click on this link, it takes you to the profile. Now this is where all the permissions are listed. Okay, click on edit. The first one is the app settings, you see here. And see, all the apps are listed here and all the apps are visible. Now I said I just want him to see the sales and marketing app, so I should remove the other apps from his profile. Okay, so now sales and marketing app are only visible. You also have the option of choosing one default app. Default app means whenever he logs in, he will by default have the access to that particular app, right? So the default app is there. The sales app becomes the default app here. Save it. Okay. Now there are no other apps visible to this user, right? But you have to again understand that this same profile might be assigned to some other users also, and whatever changes you are making on a profile are going to affect other users also, so be a little careful on that side. So just because you need certain things restricted for one user, and you just go and make changes on the profile, before making any changes on the profile, consider the fact that there can and there actually are more users associated to that profile, and any change that you make in profile is going to affect them as well, right? So you have to consider that particular thing. that whether you need the changes to be made for everyone or not, right? So that's about the app permission. The same way you all other permissions are under the profile itself. Click on edit, scroll down a little. The next that you get to see here is tab settings. Okay. Tab settings, under tab settings you will see all the tabs listed, all your standard custom tabs, everything is here. See, these are your custom tabs. See, these are the custom tabs that we have created. Okay, so all your standard tabs as well as your custom tabs are listed here. You have the option of making it by default, it's on. You can make it default off, or you can hide the tab. Okay, so that's something which can be done. What is this default on, default off, and tab hidden? Default on is by default the tab is visible. Default off means by default the tab is not visible, but the user still will have option to see that tab. See, you get to see certain tabs on the tab panel, and then there is this plus button, correct? So any tab that you make default off will not be visible on the panel, but the user will have the option to click on this particular all tab button and see that. All right. Tab hidden means the tab will be completely hidden. He will not even get to see the tab from here. Got it? So depends. If your concern is that you just want to remove the tab from the tab panel, but still you want the end user to have access to that tab, then make it default off. So it will not appear on the panel, and it will just go inside this all tab button. Now, when you click on the all tab, or when the user clicks on the all tab, he will be able to see those tabs. Right? The ones which are default off will be visible under this. Right. So for the tab permission, you have it here, standard tab settings, custom tab settings. Scroll down, and then there is a big list of admin permissions and general permissions here, general user permissions here, right? So which can be assigned to a profile. Then comes the standard object permissions and the custom object permissions. So the object permission which I was talking about, you have the option to control what level of access you want to allow to the users for a certain object. So you see read, create, edit, delete. Just ignore this part for some time now. I'll talk about this later on. Just see this one. Read, create, edit, delete. So anyone who has all these four options will be able to do all four things on that particular object. Anyone who has just read permission will only be able to see the data, right? So that's how it is. And just below this you see custom object permissions also, right? We see the custom object permissions as well. Now, do you see an interesting thing here? None of these is editable. I'm not able to edit any of these things. It's not editable. The object permission is not editable. The tab and app permission was editable, but this is not editable, and you don't have an option to edit it. Okay, so this is because it's a standard profile. So for standard profile, object permissions cannot be edited. All right. For a standard profile, you don't have the option to edit the object permissions. Whatever object permissions Salesforce has set for their standard profiles, that's what is going to be there and you cannot edit that. Now what do I do if I need the same kind of a profile without a delete permission? Go ahead, create a custom profile. Clone it, create a custom profile. Let's say my set of users need all similar permissions, but they don't need they should not have the delete permission. So what is the best thing that I can do? I can just go ahead and create a custom profile, and to make sure that I'm actually getting the similar kind of permissions in that also, I can clone it from the system administrator profile. So just go to profiles, click on new profile, clone it from the system admin profile, whatever name you want to do it. Now this is your custom profile. Save. Support admin is your custom profile. And if you go to the custom profile, try to edit this, come to the object permission, see everything you can edit. You have the option of editing everything. Now if you don't want the delete permission, you just go and remove the delete permission. Correct. So this is a small thing that we have to keep in mind, that on a standard profile we will not be able to control or make any changes on the objects. Standard object as well as custom object will not be able to make any changes, right? So either you are okay with the object permission of the standard profile, or you could go ahead and create a custom profile. All right. Now the field permission. So object permission also we have seen. Where is the field permission? For field permission, you don't have to click on edit.
Jeet,
Yep.
Jeet, while we are cloning the permission,
Hmm.
the profile, sorry,
Hmm.
why don't we just click, because I saw edit or clone option in front of the profile name. Why don't we click clone and we can go ahead and give the name for the new profile, right?
No,
Or do we need to click new profile
no, no, absolutely
when we
correct.
need
So, one second. I think I've told earlier also, let's put questions towards the middle of the sessions. Secondly, there can be, just to answer this thing, there can be two, three ways of doing the same thing. So while I'm demonstrating it, if I'm using one option, that does not mean that I'm saying that the other option is wrong. So both the options are correct. Right? So the user interface kind of thing, there can be two ways of achieving the same thing. All right. So there is nothing wrong if you want to click on this clone and create the profile. That's also fine.
to?
Correct.
Okay.
Same thing,
Yeah.
doesn't make any difference. All right. Now comes the field permission. So for field permission, you don't have to click on edit. Just be, just keep this in mind, because if you click on edit, then you will not find the field permission. So you don't have to click on edit. You want to control the field permission for a certain profile. Just come to that profile and scroll down. Don't click on edit. Let me remind you again. And if you scroll down a little, you will find the field level security. Here it is. Right. For example, for the support admin profile, I don't want them to see contact email ID. Right. Contact email ID is a confidential field for me, and I don't want this set of users to see that. So you just have to come to the field level security for this profile. Which object are we talking about? We are talking about contact. Correct. And I'm actually talking about the email field. So email field is inside contact. So you just have to come to the contact, click on view, and click on edit here. Okay. Now you see all the fields of contact are listed here. Email is the one that I want to control the visibility on. Email field is also there. Let's go and remove the visibility from here. Now this, sorry, the users under this profile, the support admin profile, they will not be able to see the email IDs. Fine. So very simple. Determine which field needs to be made, needs to be hidden from which profile. Go to the profile and then go to that particular object and click on edit, and you will have the list of all the fields on that object. Like in this case, contact. I have a list of all the fields in the contact. I just want to hide the email field, so I've made it not visible. That's it. All right. Now, this might remind you of something you came across while creating a field also. While you create a field, it gives you a list of all the profiles and it asks you which all profiles you want this field to be visible on. I have always told you click on visible. While creating field, if you guys remember, I told you that at the top click on visible. Right? So if you go and create a field today, you will understand why we were making that visible. Clicking on the top was actually making it visible for all the profiles. Right? Now the same thing can be done from here also. So you, at the time of creating the field, you have an option that the field will be visible to which all profiles. You have the option of controlling that at the time of creating the field. But in case, it's not necessary that all those settings you will do at the time of creating the field, right? In case that setting has not been done at the time of creating the field, later on if you want to do it, you can just go to that particular profile and click on field level security. Go to field level security, select the object, come to the fields and edit it. Right. So all these options are not just making the field invisible, or not just removing the visibility. You also have the option of making the field read only. Right. So if you make a field read only for a certain profile, they will only be able to see the data. They might have access to edit data for other fields, but for that particular field, they will only be able to see the data. So that is also there. All right. Okay. So we talked about users, how to create users. Then I talked about profile. So profile is collection of permissions which is given to the user, which is assigned to the user. And then I talked about two different profiles, standard profile, custom profile, which is very simple concept. Salesforce by default has given us a list of profiles. Those are standard profiles. We also have the option of creating our own profiles, which are custom profiles. Right? And then we just saw what all permissions we can control on profile. App permission, tab permission, object permission, field permissions. Right? All these things can be controlled and we just saw how to do that. Now tell me if you guys have any question anywhere. I see some in the chat window, but in case you have typed something in chat window and you want to ask, that's also fine.
Okay, I have a couple of questions. So while you're explaining all these permissions, I was wondering if there's something called as a record level security as well.
That's something, but it is not under profile. We are still to talk about more about permissions.
Okay, fine. Um, I typed a question. Yeah, is there a limitation on the number of profiles that we can create based on the licenses that we own?
Number of number of custom profiles you can create. That's what you're asking.
Correct. Yes.
Um, that's something which I will need to check. But usually, we don't come across if there's a limitation. This is something which we don't usually come across because how many profiles are you actually going to create and all. So I can just quickly check and let you know on that part if there is a certain limitation. But usually you will require 3, 4, 5 kind of profiles, and there will not be any problem as such. So you don't hit that
Okay.
limit very frequently.
Okay. Also, I'm just curious about this. I don't know if this will have an answer or not, but you said that we cannot edit the standard object profile, right?
Mhm.
Why would Salesforce have that when you can clone and edit it? Why wouldn't they allow their own standard object to be editable?
No, see, the point is that every product, not just about Salesforce, every product in the world has a certain standard set of features, and they will not allow you to go and change that standard set of features. Okay, there are a lot of reasons, the branding gets destroyed and all that stuff, but that's about other products. Think about Salesforce. Salesforce has a standard what do you call it, set of objects, permissions, profiles. So they have a standard application, and there is a complete list of standard components which form that standard application, right?
Yeah.
Why Salesforce does not allow us to edit all those things? Just don't think about the profile point of view now. Think about everything else. They have their objects, they have the names given to the objects, tabs are there, names given to the tabs. You just try and delete a standard tab, you cannot. Try to edit the name of a standard object, you cannot. Try to change the name of a standard field, you cannot. Why? Because if they allow you to do that, they allow us to make changes in the standard profiles and standard other or other standard components, the applications which are being developed around Salesforce will not work properly. Now you might be using Salesforce. There is this uh, what do you call for example account. Okay, if they allow you to go and make changes in the account name, don't you think their programming logic which has been written at the back end that will fail? Correct. And what about other people who are developing applications? So think about Salesforce application at the first place, then think about the other people who are developing other applications around it. Salesforce has now got, I do not know, a lot of thousands of apps on the app exchange. Right? There are a lot of vendors who develop applications which work properly with Salesforce standard apps.
Right.
But if
Yeah.
you go ahead and make changes, and if they allow, then basically everyone is almost going to go and make changes on that. Then that standard set of names, things, if they are changed, those none of those applications is going to work properly. So for that reason, the standard functionality is standard. What you want to develop, what you feel that you are able to control, go ahead and develop. Salesforce functionality is not going to actually come and uh, interact with your custom things. You are responsible for developing your stuff. You just go and whatever program you can write, you just write. So they have given us both the options. They do not allow us to make changes in the standard things, and they allow us to make changes on the custom things, or they allow us to create the custom thing. Make sense? Logical, no?
Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
All right.
I'm
Yeah.
done.
Something else? No. Anyone else? Anything? Any other question? I saw one more question: how to edit these edit, create permissions? All right. Okay. So now the next, huh? Yeah,
Okay, can permissions be changed on an individual user level?
yeah. That's again something which we still need to discuss. It's a good thing. We are going to talk about that. All right. So let's see this now. Now, just some time back we were talking about making changes on the profile, and I told you that if you change something on profile, the entire set of users who are using the same profile basically all are going to get affected, right? Sometimes you will have a requirement where you need certain permissions only for a certain user, right? Let's say there are 10 people in the team, sales team. They do not need cases object. Okay, but a sales team is of 10 people, 10 members, right? Now one of these sales team members is actually working with the customer support team on some project. One user needs access to cases. So one exception basically. All 10 of them, the entire team of say sales reps, they do not have access to cases object. That's what is in their profile. But one user, since he's working on a special project with the support team, he needs access to the cases object for 1 month. What is the best we can do in this case? How do we achieve this? This is kind of a small exception to that particular profile concept. I need to define that exception. So what's the best thing that we can do here?
We can give extra permissions to him in
Yes,
his profile.
we can give extra permission to him. But that cannot be given through profile, because whatever your profile is a common thing. So if you put anything in profile, all these things will also have access. All these people, other 10 people will also have access, right? So for that, Salesforce gives you one more option, which is called a permission set. What is permission set? Permission set is also collection of permissions. Okay, this is also collection of permissions, but it is more like an extension of the permissions, right? So if a certain user already has a profile and he needs a few additional permissions which are not given to other people in his profile, then you can create a permission set and give it only to that user. Yeah. So it's like a top-up or add-on permission collection of permissions which you actually allow only to a certain user. Rest everything is same. Permission set and profile concept is same. Profile is something which every user will have. Permission set is something which only people who need it, like your if you're using a mobile phone, there is a basic plan, right? Everyone gets that basic plan, and then they come up with a top-up kind of a plan that, okay, fine, if you do more SMS, then you take this also, combine it with your existing plan. So the base plan remains same, and the top-up, whoever gets it, will have that additional benefits. The same thing, same concept. So if you go here, go to setup, manage users, permission sets, right? So if you feel that one of your user needs some additional permission, just go ahead and create a permission set for that user. By default, there are no permission sets available. By default, there are no permission sets available, which means there are no standard permission sets by Salesforce. You can only create custom permission sets. So you just have to create it. So to create a permission set, put the permissions into it and assign it to the user. Okay. Now, what permission you want to assign, that you decide here. You want to assign apps, you want to assign object settings, app permissions. What do you want to give? Right. Let's say I want to give some object permissions. Cases, right? So come to object setting, go to cases, click on edit. Okay, what permission you want to give on cases? I want to give read, create, edit, delete. Okay. Yes. Save. So now this permission set PS1 has the permission, exclusive permission enclosed for accessing cases, to read, create, edit, delete cases, right? Now if I go and give this permission set to a certain user, he will be able to do these things with the cases, even if he does not have the permission to edit cases or view cases from his profile. Got it? Now, how do you assign the permission set to the user? You just have to go to the user, scroll down, permission set assignment. Click on edit assignment. Select the permission set that you want to allow to this user. Click on save. That's it. So now this particular user has this permission set also, right? So in addition to the profile permissions that the user gets from the profile, he will also have access to the permission set. So permission set allows him to have access to all his permissions. So the additional permissions, which everyone else in that profile will not have. Got it? So anytime you have an requirement, a exception that one user in that entire set of profile needs one additional permission, please go ahead and use this permission set. Right? Okay. So any questions here? Any doubts? Anyone? No, we're good. So we talked about profiles and permission sets. We'll continue to discuss on the same thing tomorrow. We are still to talk about how do we control the access to the data. So far we are just talking about the metadata, basically the components. But the important factor is also to control access to the actual data. Whether you will see my data or I will see your data, or whether everyone will get to see everyone's data, that sort of thing needs to be done. Right. So that's something which we will continue to discuss in tomorrow's session. All right.